in a rapidly changing world. Where global powers rise and fall. India in the Global Crossroads, a geopolitical documentary.
In April 1945, as American and Soviet soldiers shook hands at the River Elbe, the Second World War was drawing to a close. Yet beneath this moment of victory lay the seeds of a new global conflict. Former allies soon became rivals, divided by ideology, security interests, and visions of world order. Out of this tension emerged bipolarity, a system dominated by two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. Both possessed massive military capabilities and nuclear weapons powerful enough to annihilate each other. This created a tense but stable standoff known as nuclear deterrence. Global politics revolved around this rivalry, with most countries pulled into one camp or the other. Yet even at the height of this seemingly rigid bipolar order, forces were already emerging that would challenge its simplicity.
Despite appearances, bipolarity was never completely rigid. The wave of decolonization across Asia and Africa created dozens of new states, unwilling to be mere pawns in superpower competition. A distinct third world political identity began to emerge. At the same time, unity within the blocs weakened. China broke with the Soviet Union, revealing deep ideological and strategic divisions within the communist world. In Western Europe, leaders such as Charles de Gaulle sought greater autonomy from American influence. These developments signaled an early diffusion of power. Even before the Cold War ended, the world was quietly becoming more complex. As these early cracks widened, the superpowers were forced to rethink how rivalry itself could be managed without triggering catastrophe.
The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 exposed how close the world had come to nuclear disaster. In its aftermath, the superpowers pursued Détente, a period of reduced tension and cautious cooperation. Arms control agreements, such as SALT I, sought to place limits on nuclear competition and stabilize the rivalry. Yet détente did not eliminate conflict. Proxy wars continued, and mutual suspicion persisted. By the late 1970s, events such as the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan and upheavals in West Asia brought détente to an end, reviving Cold War hostility. By the early 1980s, it was increasingly clear that managing rivalry was no longer enough. The Cold War system itself was under strain.
A decisive turning point came in 1985 with the rise of Mikhail Gorbachev. Convinced that permanent confrontation was unsustainable, he introduced reforms aimed at openness and economic restructuring. More importantly, he redefined Soviet foreign policy, seeking cooperation rather than rivalry. Gorbachev's engagement with American President Ronald Reagan transformed decades of hostility into dialogue. For the first time since 1945, the Cold War appeared reversible. These changes soon moved beyond diplomatic dialogue, setting the stage for events that would reshape Europe and the world.
In 1989, the Cold War order collapsed, dramatically but peacefully. Across Eastern Europe, communist regimes fell in rapid succession. The Berlin Wall, symbol of global division, was opened by popular pressure, not military force. Crucially, the Soviet Union did not intervene. Gorbachev refused to use force, allowing Eastern Europe to break free. The foundations of bipolarity crumbled before the world's eyes. What unfolded in Eastern Europe was only the beginning. The crisis of bipolarity soon reached the heart of the Soviet state itself.
The final blow came in 1991. An attempted coup by hardliners failed, but it accelerated the breakup of the Soviet state. On December 25, 1991, Gorbachev resigned as president of a union that had already ceased to exist.
Tonight, я покидаю свой пост с тревогой, но и с надеждой, с верой в вас, вашу мудрость и силу духа. Мы наследники великой цивилизации, и сейчас от всех и каждого зависит, чтобы она возродилась к новой, современной и достойной жизни.
The president who returned to power from house arrest after the failure of the August coup never recovered his authority and tonight paid the political price.
With the collapse of the Soviet Union, the bipolar world formally ended. One of the two central pillars of post-war geopolitics vanished, closing the Cold War era. With the Cold War over, the world entered unfamiliar territory, no longer divided between two camps, but uncertain about what would replace them.
The immediate aftermath of the Cold War saw a brief unipolar moment, dominated by American power. However, this dominance proved temporary. Over time, deeper structural changes reshaped global politics. Economic growth spread beyond the West. China rose rapidly to become a major economic and strategic power. The European Union emerged as a significant economic and regulatory actor. Across Asia, Latin America, and Africa, new centers of influence developed. Power became diffused rather than concentrated, giving rise to a multipolar world characterized by multiple power centers and flexible alignments.
In this new order, no single power can dominate global affairs. The United States struggles to adapt to a world it no longer controls alone. Russia seeks to reclaim influence lost after the Cold War. Competition has returned, but in fragmented, indirect, and regional forms. It is within this evolving and contested global order that India's foreign policy choices must be understood.